Hey there, Ed McCormack here, founder of the crypto education platform, DChained. Before we start today's video, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, pound that like button. We appreciate all the support we get from viewers like yourself in helping grow this channel. So with that out of the way, let's jump into, without a doubt, one of the most requested topics that I get every single day, which is what the hell is going on with DeFi? Now, in saying that, I just want to draw the caveat. There's really been no other sector in blockchain that has grown at such an explosive rate than DeFi. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at some of the biggest platforms in DeFi, Aave, Compound, Sushi, Uni, they really have been lagging over the last 6 months. And many investors are questioning, with Ethereum hitting all-time highs, is there something going on with DeFi? And the answer is, very simply, yes. There is a whole new wave called DeFi 2.0, these new platforms that are taking a whole new fresh approach to the way that investors can generate some new income, projects can gain the funding that they need, and ultimately the whole idea of decentralization in DeFi taken to a whole nother level. And we're going to be talking about how this needs to be on your radar in 2022 and how you can start earning some big returns starting now. So before we jump into DeFi 2.0, let's just talk about what DeFi is, because many times it's one of the most misunderstood sectors in all of blockchain. And very simply what it is, it's a platform or the ecosystem that allows someone to take a financial action without requiring an intermediary like a bank. So whether that's taking out a loan, making a payment, or investing in some type of passive income that can help net you some nice returns, like taking a stable coin and putting it on a exchange so that you can earn a nice 3, 4, 5% APY. Now, sounds great, but the fact is that ironically, as blockchain, which is all about decentralization and peer-to-peer, as it gets bigger, it's becoming more centralized. Now, we won't even go into the Coinbases of the world and eToro and Robinhood, platforms that are publicly traded, and of course, those are highly centralized. But if we even look at the heartbeat that runs DeFi, which are stable coins, we're talking about, for the big boys, the biggest stable coins out there, products of centralized organizations. USDC is a product of a company called Circle. Tether is part of Tether Limited. Even Binance USD, or looking at DAI, which is run by an organization called Maker. These are all organizations that up until this point have really had a monopoly and had the idea of, how do we run this decentralized finance world without banks really on lockdown? However, it's under threat now. If you've been following the news, you'll know that different regulatory groups, especially here in the US this past week, led by Janet Yellen, who's the head of the Treasury, are now putting these companies running these large stablecoins under a microscope and starting to kick around the idea of applying governance and regulation just like what they do for different banks. Now, this has created a lot of concern because these stablecoins I just mentioned really represent the vast majority of liquidity in how a lot of trades are done, both on centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. Tether is one of the biggest bases for a trading pair. You would buy Ethereum bought by having Tether, or you would do USDC if you wanted to sell your Bitcoin and withdraw from your bank through Coinbase. That now is under threat. And this is where, over the last year, you have seen this huge movement called DeFi 2.0 capitalizing on many of the concerns that people are having around regulation, but also a lot of the concerns that a lot of investors are having around the fact that many of the biggest DeFi platforms are centralized companies. And these are being led by this visionary in the blockchain space named Danielle Sesta, who is running a group that introduced a whole new way of not only providing a stable coin that is decentralized, but also an ecosystem built around it to help drive this widespread adoption. And the success that they've had is off the charts. In only a year, they went from 0 to roughly 3 to 4% of the entire stable coin market share with this new coin that they introduced called Magic Internet Money. Now, MIM, which is its abbreviation, I couldn't make up. It's a phenomenal name. It's hysterical, but it's no joke. In fact, when you think about how Magic Internet Money works, it's brilliant. And it's taking a model that banks have been doing for years. If you went into a bank and you said, I would like a loan, and I'm going to first put up an interest-bearing asset. So I'm going to take a treasury bill. I'm going to put that into the bank. And by the way, this happens every day at a much greater scale through LIBOR, or there's many different exchanges and many different sort of large bonds that occur between the Federal Reserve and the banks, and it happens at the global scale. But these interest-bearing assets are put into these institutions, and then loans are traded. That's how Magic Internet Money works. Rather than taking a stable coin and putting it into just an asset that ultimately, as we're unfortunately seeing around the world, is often depreciating, like the US dollar, the pound, the euro, etc. Meaning, if I want a one-to-one peg for USD coin, what's the purpose? My USD coin is going to be worth less tomorrow than it is today. You're not solving anything with cryptocurrency. Nothing. This is where Magic Internet Money really plays a solid role, because not only does it hold that peg extremely well, because again, this is an asset that's generating interest, oftentimes much greater than what any inflation, barring some crazy ones around the world, are generating. And we won't go too deep into how these interest-bearing assets are produced. They are produced on popular platforms such as Curve or Wi-Fi, just to name a few. But they're created in a way which is generating a tremendous amount of revenue for the supporting platform, such as Abracadabra, which is what Danielle and his team have built, more not only to provide that foundation to get Magic Internet Money out there, but also to provide a way for both borrowing and lending to happen at a great scale using Magic Internet Money. Now, in saying that, how do I now take this money and apply it and inject it into where most of DeFi is happening, which is decentralized exchanges? And this is where Danielle and his team have introduced two platforms that address two different groups of stakeholders. The first one are your general investors, people like you and I. And when we go on a decentralized exchange like Sushi or Uni, anytime you make an exchange, we are not trading with each other directly. We're actually trading into a liquidity pool. And it's basically a collection of assets that investors have put in their coins into in order to get passive income from the fees that are charged whenever I do a swap. So if I wanted to put up Ethereum and USDC and put up 50% of my investment in Ether, 50% in USDC, and I'm going to get whatever proportion I have and represent in that overall pool as a fee, and I just set it and forget it. It's a great way of making some money. It's proven, it's done very well. The problem is, though, that there are more platforms that are being introduced every single day. And that creates two big issues. One, is my APY, my return, the best that I can get for that trading pair? If it's USDC and ETH, just because it's 10% today on Uni, tomorrow that could drop to 5, but on another platform, it could be 20. So I have the burden now of having to monitor all these decentralized exchanges to make sure that I'm getting the best return possible. And at the same time, if I find a better return, I have to withdraw that money from Uniswap, which is going to cost me a fortune in gas fees, and then I got to pay gas fees again to put it onto a new platform. So you could see here that there's a lot of work and money that's going to have to fall on your shoulders in order to execute on that. And this is where Danielle has introduced a platform called Popsicle Finance that takes on a lot of the heavy lifting of doing this. Now, yield farming, which is what the process that we're talking about right now, it's always been favorable towards large investors or whales. Now, when we look at a platform, though, that is taking a collective of individual investors who are putting up anywhere from $5,000 and up of their assets into this platform, and when you get tens of thousands of them, you become a pretty big player in the space. And ultimately, the vision is that Popsicle Finance in the very near future will account for 80 to 90% of liquidity on the biggest DEX that's out there, which is Uni. Now, in saying that, how do we now address the other elephant in the room, the big problem in DeFi, which is if I'm a founder of a company and I'm looking to launch a platform, how do I have liquidity put onto these decentralized exchanges so that investors could start trading my token? And historically, there has been really only a few options that have been made available. One, I could pay an exorbitant fee and rent that liquidity, and there are many platforms that offer that, but that's going to be very, very expensive. The second is I can offer some type of incentive for those investors, and in doing so, I'll offer a huge interest rate, and I'll pay it out in my native token, and ultimately maybe even throw some type of farm or staking in there as well. The problem is for one, whenever you do that, you're diluting any of the investors that are in your project with good intentions. Those investors who believe in your project, the ones that want to support you, when you run these giant interest rate based programs, you're diluting everybody. And this has become a huge problem because with some of the biggest players out there that participate in these yield farming or these staking programs, oftentimes the numbers show that 50% of them will leave within 24 hours. And these are the biggest players. And about 80 to 90% of them will leave within 72 hours. And guess what they do when they leave? If you guess dump those tokens, you would be right. So not only now do you have the issue of hyperinflation because all these tokens are being produced, but then you have all these investors applying such huge amounts of sell pressure, which means that you're getting the double whammy here. And that's partially why many solid projects out there with solid teams, great developers are just struggling. Their token is never recovered because they just got buried on both sides. This is where this new solution of bonds come into play. And how bonds work, it's twofold. For one, if I'm a founder, I can simply take that money that I would have provided represented in tokens for a liquidity pool, and rather than putting it out there and running these crazy emissions, I could just buy a bond at a discount. And the trade-off is that that platform that's offering up that bond will get a cut of any transaction fees that occur. And this is where you've seen Ohm, which is Olympus Pro, has come out. And you're also now seeing this new platform, which is Danielle and his team have created, called Wonderland. And now this actually addresses more so an ecosystem on Avalanche more than a single individual project. But it does help drive this huge amount of demand for many of these small projects that are on this emerging platform by allowing investors to buy those projects. So whether it's Trader Joe, so you buy Joe and you pair it with Magic Internet Money, you put it up in a pool, and what you get is an LP token that you can then go and use to mint a Wonderland governance token called Time. Now, the beautiful thing here is that when you mint, you're getting it at a discount. So not only are you buying that project on Avalanche, which is Joe, but you're also going to lock that token up, the liquidity pool token that you're given, for 5 days. So going back to those numbers that we just talked about, 80 to 90% of LP investors who are getting involved in these programs, they're gone 72 hours later. Now we're talking about almost double that time, and you have everybody still involved. And on top of that, this is where things get interesting, because these investors that are using these LP tokens in order to mint this new governance token called Time, they're putting real money into these treasuries, into these reserves. So what you're being given is not only an asset that has collateral behind it, because all those LP tokens represent real assets, but you're also supporting small projects and businesses. And because Magic Internet Money is on the trading pair, you're getting more people who are adopting and using MIM. So going back to how this is all connected, it all comes down to MIM as the stable coin that is the centerpiece of this entire new DeFi 2.0 ecosystem. And with that, you now have a way of distributing and getting MIM into investors' hands and wallets, both from lending and borrowing, from liquidity optimization, all the way down to investing and fundraising. And this is where I think investors really need to start putting the governance tokens for these platforms like Spell, which is Abracadabra, ICE, which is Popsicle Finance, Time, which is Magic Internet Money, and potentially substituting some of those stable coins you have in your wallet with Magic Internet Money, MIM. So hope you weren't thrown off by all the acronyms. Hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please tell your friends and family. We're always looking to grow this channel and get more supporters learning about crypto. And until next time, happy and safe investing. I'll speak with you soon.